All right, my emotionally nosy little besties, are we ready to waste a few more precious minutes of our lives together on this very necessary public service of absolute uselessness? Good, because you're gonna want to stick with me, my friends, all the way to the end of this one. This story starts calm, polite, well-mannered, and then slowly reaches into your chest and rearranges things. Before we begin, quick pause. Go grab a coffee, yes, now. I'll wait. Grab your coffee, come back, get comfortable, and sit with me while I tell you this ridiculous story, the kind that makes you laugh nervously and think, wow, thank God that's not me.
Until you realize it absolutely could be. She was always the responsible one, the fixer, the emotional adult, the person everyone called when something went wrong, and never asked how much it cost her. If bills needed paying, she handled it. If fights broke out, she mediated. If someone needed support at 3 in the morning, there she was half asleep, fully present. Everyone described her the same way. She's strong. She's mature. She can handle anything. And once people decide that about you, they start believing you can also handle betrayal. Without asking, without warning, without honesty. Her partner had been by her side for years. Not romantic, not particularly attentive, but consistent, reliable on the surface. They shared routines, space, quiet evenings. He knew exactly how to act around her family. When to laugh, when to nod, when to place a hand on her back like the perfect partner. A flawless performance, my friends. Award-worthy. At family gatherings, he always sat next to her, poured her drinks, pulled out her chair, and everyone smiled. Everyone. She never questioned those smiles. Because when you trust people, you don't audit their behavior. You don't count silences. You don't analyze looks. Besides, why would she doubt them? They were her family, the people who were supposed to protect her. First mistake. She was the one who defended him whenever something fell off. Don't exaggerate, she'd say. That's just how he is. And everyone would nod quickly, not because they agreed, but because they knew exactly what she meant. Irony is rude like that. The cracks started small, almost invisible. Conversation stopping when she walked into a room. Looks exchanged a second too long. Inside jokes she wasn't part of. One time, her sister casually said, "Well, you know how he is." She laughed. Yeah, I know. But her sister didn't laugh back. And right there, my friends, the coffee started tasting bitter. Another time, it was her mother. She didn't ask how she was. She asked if she was okay. That loaded question. The one that pretends to care but smells like guilt. She said yes. She always said yes. Because being the strong one means not making people uncomfortable, not asking hard questions, not disrupting the peace everyone else enjoys. And because deep down, she still believed honesty was the default. Poor thing. For months, something fell off. Like furniture slightly moved in a familiar room. Nothing dramatic enough to confront. Just unsettling enough to linger. Her partner came home late, with perfect excuses. Too perfect. Her family asked fewer questions. Way fewer. And still no one said anything. My friends. How many lies survive simply because no one wants to be the first to speak. The truth didn't arrive with screaming. It didn't come with tears. It came with a notification. A message lit up her partner's phone. She wasn't snooping. She wasn't suspicious. She just glanced over and saw a name written with a nickname, followed by a heart that absolutely was not hers. That exact moment when your stomach drops. When your body understands before your mind catches up. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't say a word. She observed. Stored the information. And waited. Because when you've been the responsible one your whole life, You learn to confirm reality before reacting. That night, there was a family dinner. Perfect timing. For the first time, she actually looked. She watched her father avoid eye contact. Her mother pour wine, without lifting her head. Her sister clench her jaw before speaking. And suddenly, everything made sense. This wasn't new. This wasn't recent. This wasn't a mistake. This was a collective lie, maintained with discipline, silence, and rehearsed excuses. When she finally asked, no one looked surprised. And that was the worst part. We didn't know how to tell you, someone said. We didn't think you were ready, another added. We were trying to protect you, her mother finished, eyes down. She listened, nodded, breathed. Inside her, something shifted permanently. Because in that moment, she understood something brutal. They didn't exclude her because she was fragile. They excluded her because she was convenient. Tell me, my friends, what do you do when you realize everyone decided to lie to you so they wouldn't have to feel uncomfortable? After that conversation, no one raised their voice. There was no dramatic explosion. No plates shattered. No doors slammed. There was something worse. Normalcy. Polite, rehearsed, deeply insulting normalcy. Her mother asked if she wanted more coffee. Her father commented on the weather. Her sister checked her phone like nothing had happened. And her partner. Her partner relaxed. Because the truth was out. But the consequences hadn't arrived yet. She smiled. That well-trained smile you learn when you don't want to explain yourself. The one that says, I'm fine. While your internal furniture is being violently rearranged. She left early. Said she was tired. No one stopped her. That was the first real confirmation. They didn't try to keep her there. At home, she sat on the edge of the bed that night, lights off. Listened to her partner move around the kitchen. Humming. Comfortable. Acting like the ground hadn't just cracked open. And that's when it hit her, my friends. When someone isn't afraid of losing you, it's because they believe you're already secured. She didn't cry that night. Not because it didn't hurt, but because her mind was busy rewinding. Conversations she'd brushed off. Comments that hadn't landed right. Moments that once felt normal and now felt crooked. Her sister defending him too aggressively. Her mother saying, don't be so demanding, no one's perfect. Her father avoiding being alone with her. It all lined up. Late. But perfectly. My friends, how many memories only make sense once the illusion breaks. The next day, she didn't confront anyone. Not yet. Because she wasn't impulsive. She was strategic. And she decided to do something she'd never done before. Listen without responding. Watch without reacting. Let people expose themselves. Spoiler alert. They did. Enthusiastically. Over the next few days, her family got weird. Too attentive. Too careful. Too sweet. How are you doing? Texts. Unnecessary phone calls. Last-minute invitations. Not to talk about what happened. Never that. Just to make sure she was still the same version of herself. The fixer. The peacekeeper. The one who doesn't rock the boat. And she let them believe it. Her partner, meanwhile, went into damage control mode. Extra kindness. Small gifts. Longer hugs. Vague promises. We're going to be okay, he said. Yes. That dangerous sentence. The one that promises nothing. And asks you to accept everything. She nodded. Listened. Filed every word away into a mental folder labeled evidence. Because when someone lies to you for years, you learn to document emotionally. One afternoon, her sister invited her for coffee. Classic move. They talked about work, about random things, about literally anything except the obvious. Until she gently asked, how long have you known? Silence. Heavy. Thick. Unavoidable. For a while, her sister admitted. No apology yet. No explanation. And you never thought about telling me? Her sister sighed.
You were doing so well.
There it was, my friends. The sentence. You were doing so well. As if ignorance were happiness. As if truth were optional. As if her life were a fragile ornament everyone else had the right to handle. She smiled. I understand, she said. She didn't. She recorded. That night, she watched her partner sleep. Really watched him. Thought about the years together. The decisions they'd made. The future that now felt written in disappearing ink. And the question that changed everything finally surfaced. Not why did you cheat?
But
Why did everyone decide I didn't deserve to know? From that moment on, something shifted. Not loudly. Dangerously. She stopped explaining. Stopped justifying. Stopped managing other people's feelings. She came home later. Answered less.
chose silence.
But this time on purpose. And her family noticed. You seem distant, her mother said one day.
Tired, she replied.
Half-truths. They'd taught her well. My friends, do you see how survival skills are passed down like heirlooms? The first boundary arrived without an announcement. Another family dinner. Everyone present. Full table. Her partner made a joke. One of those comments she used to soften. To redirect.
To save.
This time, she let it land. Like a glass shattering on the floor. Silence. No one laughed. No one corrected him. And neither did she. That's when everyone realized something terrifying. She wasn't playing the same role anymore. If you're still with me, hit that like, because this is where it turns uncomfortable. The shift didn't come with a speech. There was no dramatic moment in front of a mirror. No declaration of independence. It arrived quietly on a random morning, with a thought so clear it almost felt rude. Staying like this will hurt more than leaving. And for the first time in a very long time, she chose her own discomfort over everyone else's comfort. Yes, my friends, that terrifying moment when you decide to stop being the good one. It started small. That's how the dangerous changes always start. She stopped explaining where she was going. Stopped checking if it was okay to be gone for hours. Stopped replying instantly. Nothing aggressive. Nothing obvious enough to confront. But they felt it. Families always feel it. When the person holding everything together loosens their grip. Her mother started calling more. Just checking on you, she'd say. Translation. Are you still under control? She answered politely. Briefly. From a distance. Her sister ramped up the invitations. Coffee dates. Walks. Justice moments. They wanted closeness. But not honesty. They wanted the version of her that absorbed discomfort. So they didn't have to.
And her partner.
Oh, her partner noticed immediately. Because when someone stops arguing, that's not peace. That's preparation. He asked if something was wrong. She said no. And for once, that answer was true. Nothing was wrong. Everything was decided. One evening, he tried to regain emotional control. I feel like you're pulling away, he said. She looked at him slowly.
Calm.
Measured. Since when?
She asked.
Such a simple question. Such a lethal one. He hesitated.
Lately.
She nodded. Interesting, she replied. I felt alone for years. You just didn't notice. Silence. The kind of silence that can't be patched over. She didn't accuse him. Didn't cry. Didn't raise her voice. And that terrified him. Because he was prepared for chaos. For forgiveness. For bargaining. Not for calm. My friends, nothing scares people more than someone who is already left emotionally. The next family dinner was the breaking point. Though no one realized it yet. Long table. Familiar dishes. Surface-level conversation. She sat there like a guest in her own life. Her father talked about work. Her mother about plans. Her sister avoided eye contact. Then her mother said it. The wrong sentence. What matters is that we're all together. She set her fork down.
Gently.
Deliberately. Together how? She asked. The table stiffened. As a family, her mother replied uneasy. She tilted her head. A family that tells the truth? Or a family that decides who deserves it? Total silence. No one answered, because every answer would have been an admission. "I'm not asking for explanations," she continued. "I've already heard them." Her eyes moved slowly around the table. "I just want to know,
Did anyone think about me?
when you all chose to stay quiet, no one spoke. And that was the answer." She stood up.
Thank you for dinner, she said.
It was good, polite, controlled, final. And she left. That night, she packed without rushing. Not everything, just what mattered. Because she wasn't running. She was closing. Her partner stood in the doorway. "Is this it?" he asked. She looked at him calmly. "It was over the moment you decided. I didn't deserve the truth. No shouting. No pleading. Just acceptance. Much too late." She left without drama. Without speeches. And somehow, that hurt them more than anything else. Because she didn't give them one last chance to justify themselves. My friends, do you see how silence can be louder than any scream? The days that followed felt strange.
Light. Sad. Free.
She slept better. Breathed deeper. For the first time in years, she wasn't carrying a lie she didn't create. The family, meanwhile, started unraveling. Without her to mediate, conflict surfaced. Because the person who fixes everything also hides what's broken. Messages came in. Late apologies. Long explanations. Soft promises. She read them all.
Didn't respond.
Because understanding doesn't always mean returning. And forgiveness doesn't always mean staying. My friends, would you have closed the door this quietly? Or needed one last conversation? The first week alone felt unreal. Not lonely. Not peaceful either. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you notice things. Your own breathing. The way mornings stretch when no one expects anything from you. She woke up without anxiety sitting on her chest. Made coffee without checking her phone every few minutes. Walked through her day without anticipating other people's needs. And still, my friends, silence has opinions. It asks questions you didn't invite. Did you overreact? Were you too harsh? Should you have been more understanding? Because guilt doesn't disappear when you grow up like that. It just changes outfits. The messages kept coming. Her mother's were long, carefully worded, filled with concern and justification. "We only wanted to protect you. You were always so strong. We didn't want to hurt you." Her father's were short, awkward, clearly typed, erased and retyped. "Miss you.
Here if you want to talk."
Her sister's messages felt like walking barefoot on glass. "I'm sorry. I didn't know what to do. I felt stuck too." She read every single one.
Didn't reply. Not out of cruelty.
Out of self-respect. Because responding too soon would have meant slipping back into her old role. The translator of everyone else's emotions. One afternoon, she did something new. She called someone who didn't expect anything from her. An old friend. The kind that remembers you before you became the strong one. They met for coffee. Yes, again. Apparently coffee is where emotional truths go to be witnessed. "So how are you?" her friend asked. She thought about it. "I'm okay," she said. And sad. But calm. Her friend didn't rush to fix it. Didn't defend anyone. Didn't offer advice wrapped in excuses. She just nodded. And somehow, that simple act felt more supportive than all the family explanations combined. My friends, do you see the difference between being heard and being managed? Over time, the messages slowed down. The urgency faded. The guilt settled into something quieter. Because when the person who holds everything together leaves, at first there's panic. And then adaptation. Not growth. Adaptation. Life keeps moving. Even without you. That realization stung more than she expected. But it also freed her. One Sunday afternoon, her mother called again. She hesitated. Stared at the phone. Took a breath. And answered.
Hi.
Her mother's voice sounded small. "I just wanted to know if you're okay." That question again. The familiar one. She answered honestly this time. "I'm learning how to be." Silence. "We miss you," her mother said. She closed her eyes. I miss you too, she replied. But I can't come back as who I was. No argument. No defensiveness. Just a truth that sat heavily between them. After the call, she sat on the couch and thought about everything. The betrayal. The silence. The decisions made for her. And something finally clicked. Love doesn't require self-erasure. And family is not a free pass for dishonesty. She didn't cut them off completely, but she rewrote the rules. Shorter visits, fewer calls, real conversations even when they were uncomfortable. No more mediating. No more carrying secrets that weren't hers. No more shrinking herself to keep the peace.
And her partner.
He stayed in the past, not as a dramatic villain, just as a lesson that cost more than it should have. Because sometimes the deepest wound isn't caused by the person who betrays you. It's caused by the people who decide to protect them. Now, when she looks back, she doesn't feel constant anger. She feels something quieter, more powerful.
Clarity.
And clarity, my friends, doesn't scream, doesn't beg, doesn't go back.
So tell me, would you have forgiven? Would you have cut everyone off? Or would you have rebuilt, carefully, from a distance? Comment down below, my friends. I need to know what you'd do in this situation. Like, share, and stay with me. Because sometimes hearing a story in time keeps you from living it later.